Hello, welcome to the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition's Small Business Forum. I'm your host, David Dadekian, a small business owner here in Rhode Island. I own Eat Drink Rhode Island. As always, you can find all the information about the Small Business Coalition at risbc.org. Follow us on all the socials and so on and so forth. But always, you can check out risbc.org. We've got another great guest for us for you to watch today. It's always fun to talk to all these folks running for office. Today, we've got former Cranston Mayor Allan Fung, who is running for the 2nd Congressional District seat as the Republican. Welcome, Mayor Fung.
Hey, David. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me back on the show. Always exciting to talk about small business.
Great to have you. Thank you for having the time to talk with us today. Why don't we start? For those folks out there, obviously you're pretty well known throughout the state of Rhode Island, having been the mayor of one of the largest cities and run for office before. But why don't you give everyone out there a brief overview of who you are and what you're running for now?
No, I'm definitely happy to be back. I'm running, as you noted, for Jim Langevin's now open seat because after 22 years of dedicated service, Jim is retiring, and I'm, hoping to become your next congressman in Rhode Island in our 2nd Congressional District, which encompasses, surprise, surprise, Cranston, Rhode Island, the largest city in the district, second largest in the state. Sorry, Mayor Picosi, but just a little bit back and forth,
Yeah.
little friendly rivalry with not only Mayor Picosi, Mayor Aberdeen before him, and all the past mayors. And as you can see, I've always enjoyed having fun during my time. I'm a native Rhode Islander, born and raised. My parents were first generation to this country from Hong Kong. They met, got married there, came over to live the American dream. I was born here, my two younger sisters, and we worked all throughout our lives. Grew up in my parents' small family restaurant, a Chinese restaurant that they ran in Cranston for 35 years. So I know the ins and outs of a small business, especially the hospitality industry. And I'm running because, look, there are a lot of problems facing our country right now, facing small business owners, big business owners, facing us as just working middle class families. And that's why I'm running, because we did a lot in Cranston during my 12 years as mayor, where we took a city that was basically in fiscal distress, turned it around and made it one of the best cities to live by supporting our business owners, especially our small business guys. I want to do the same down in Washington, D.C. We've got a lot of problems driven by this inflation, out of control spending. I want to cut that spending, make sure we cut through the red tape, just like what we did in Cranston, support our business owners, because you guys are the backbones that will drive our economy and make sure we have people back to work.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's something we always point out here. If you took all the small businesses in the state together, we're the largest sector, of employers, and it's just by the nature of Rhode Island, a very small business, entrepreneur driven state, even though it's not always been the most small business friendly. You mentioned, as you said, and I know we've talked about it since it's the food industry. We've talked about it in the past. Your family owning a small business for years, so I know you've been immersed in that. And Cranston has been, I think, a great success story for a lot of small businesses as well. I think about the areas like the Ralph Square and down in Oak Lawn and things things going on all over the city. So you definitely had this experience, and we've seen this. So that's at the city level. What do you think you can do? Knowing how big the 2nd congressional district is, all the different towns and cities in it. What do you think you can do for small businesses down there in DC?
Well, first and foremost, we have to, stop this crazy inflation. A lot of it is driven by just runaway spending that's, going out of control. So that's, definitely a priority. But to actually help Rhode Island businesses, there's a couple of key things that I'd love to be able to do. First and foremost, break the supply chain bottleneck. I want to bring back some of those targeted investments to support our infrastructures, like our ports at Quonset Point, which is in the 2nd district. But not only just Quonset, but if you go up and down the bay, you've got a lot of activity going on, at those ports. A lot of business owners that rely upon that important supply chain and what comes, off of a lot of those ships that come down into the Bay Area that unload. So if we invest in our infrastructure, provide the appropriate structure for all businesses to thrive, that helps the supply chain. Second of all, we got to make sure that where energy costs have to be tackled as an issue. And this is coming from someone who believes in climate change and a greener environment, but we're not going to be able to, turn the spigot on overnight. We need a responsible plan that incorporates, green energy, but also, we have to drive down some of those costs by investing in, our energy supply in America as well. So I think an appropriate balance helps out, because as we're hearing right now, our energy costs from electricity being up. We heard Rhode Island Energy talking about some people's bills going up by $52. I feel bad for the business owners too, because that's a lot on their margins. But you're also talking about gas prices. They just filed for a 15% increase. And as individuals, many of us are reliant on home heating oil.
Right.
I topped off my tank $1,000 to top it off in April. I'm kind of worried, what it's going to be in the fall and the winter, and especially so for those that are on fixed incomes. Many people on the lower income spectrum too, they're going to be faced with these difficult choices, not about going out to eat or going to shop. They're going to be facing devastating choices about, whether they're going to afford their prescription medicines, these high, bills to heat their homes, or even the food costs. So we've got to tackle inflation, tackle supply chain, get more manufacturing and businesses supported here in Rhode Island. That's what I want to do.
Uh, Sounds good. You mentioned spending and inflation, and clearly, it's at record levels, and no end in sight at the moment. Um, Conversely, during the pandemic, especially, a lot of these spending programs did help small businesses. I mean, we, when the Small Business Coalition helped put together the small grants that worked out of Commerce, the $5,000 to $15,000 and $25,000 grants that came out of Commerce that were funded by the CARES Act and the ARPA Rescue Plan Act. So when you look at things like that did help, that certainly aided small businesses to keep them alive, to keep them going. Where do you see the opportunities to curb and to make changes?
Well, that's a great question, because one of the things that, I was appalled at, a lot of those dollars sat on the sidelines for months. If it wasn't for individuals like yourself, David, or the hospitality industry,
Right.
or even, Rick Simone up, what he was doing with Federal Hill, coming together, driving a lot of those dollars back onto the street to help the business owners. That's one of the big fights that I want to take down to Washington, D.C., cut through the red tape, because it's great to have these programs and funded. But if you can't get the dollars into the pockets of the business owners, of the residents on a quicker basis, we're all going to continue to struggle, at a longer length of time. And as we were talking about, I come from a small business background. I know how important it is to have your doors open, have the ability to expand. And coming out of that pandemic, there are definitely a lot of lessons learned, where we can definitely improve, but also work together. I'm excited to see many of the local communities continue on with, the expanded outdoor dining
Yep.
that's going on. It helps the capacity. I was proud of what we did, because I was the mayor during that start of the pandemic. It wasn't easy, but signing that executive order to kind of give many of the restaurant owners that flexibility to kind of increase and do outdoor dining, and seeing many of them still continuing on with that, shows that we must be flexible. Cutting through the red tape is first and foremost going to be a priority, but second of all, working with the Small Business Administration to ensure that they're properly funded, and ensuring that there's new programs to meet the need of many of the small business owners. I talked a lot about restaurant because that's the background I came from, and I know the fights between the front of the house and the back of the house and who's better. But there's so many others too. I was on a call today earlier where hotel owners, they're facing a lot of challenges right now because of the labor shortage.
Yeah.
That's another crisis that we have to see. Especially, it's so important for Rhode Island. We're just coming off of the summer season. Sadly to say, we're almost into the fall, but many in the hospitality industry were struggling. One of the things I definitely want to also get working on is the immigration issue. We have to make sure that we lift some of those caps on those visas, so that more of the overseas workforce can come in to help our fantastic hospitality industry, which, by the way, isn't just seasonal anymore. It's year round. because we're
Right.
bringing in so many conventions. So those are just a couple of things that I want to bring forward down to Washington, D.C., be a voice for, our industry, but also ensure that, you have a voice of someone who comes from the industry and can talk the talk and know the different levers that you guys have to touch and be that person to cut through the red tape down there. Because we've seen government, they have a great way of sometimes getting in the way, but let me be that log jam, break that log jam and get them out of our way so you can operate.
Sounds good. Uh, it's the easiest way to put it. It sounds good. I mean, workforce, has certainly been a key problem, as you mentioned. The immigration idea that certainly, is one forward thinking way of working through it. But I mean, we've got record unemployment numbers. It's so low. What do you see there? I mean, how do what's your thoughts on what can be done I don't mean to say the government can't do something, but sometimes government can't do everything. What do you see there with workforce?
Yeah, workforce is definitely a challenge, and that's in all the industries across Rhode
Right.
Island. And I think a lot of it is also fueled by, let's face it, David, burnout.
Yeah.
You have a lot of people in certain industries. My wife, as you know, is in the healthcare industry, working at Rhode Island Hospital, besides her other job at the State House fighting for us.
Yeah.
But she's seen it day to day because for 2 years straight, they were running 24/7 round the clock. They were seeing some of the most difficult challenges of, that many people faced during the pandemic. They saw many lives lost. They experienced a lot of burnout. So a lot of people towards the tail end of their career decide, you know what, I've had enough and retired. And you also had a lot of people in the midst too that said, you know what, I want to look for something different, something that's more meaningful to myself. That's something I think is going to last for the next few years because, as we've coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people's mindsets are different, a lot of different challenges, even amongst educators. I was talking to a friend of mine. She's been an educator for years now, but she came from a legal background originally. And she's a little burned out and she wants to go back into the legal profession. So you have a lot of different types of individuals for many different reasons, wanting to, jump into either different sectors or, retiring now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, the next generation is properly trained so that they can be a vital resource as they're transitioning into, many different sectors that they're passionate about because we need them more so than ever now.
So yeah, I mean that's key. I think when we talk about small business, it's obviously business focused, and there's those types of aspects, taxation, regulation, things of that nature. But education and these other things you're talking about also affect small business. An educated workforce is key. Like you just said. Where do you see what Congress can do to help education?
Continued funding for a lot of innovative programs, especially here in Rhode Island. You've got a lot of great work that's being done by our teachers every single day. You have a lot of administrators that are trying new things, new innovative things. And I'm proud to have worked with our superintendent in Cranston, had a great relationship with her. She's younger, classical high grad like myself. So, go purple. The two of us had
Cranston West side, Cranston West.
not to finish anything, but what we're trying to always do is, meet the needs of the next generation, upgrading technology. We still have so many students right now that aren't able to, access, for distance learning or access the internet at home. So making sure they have those types of capabilities. And these are some of the lessons that came out of COVID that, as a school system, they're trying to transition and meet the needs of the students. School construction is another critical piece that needs to continue to be funded at both the state level and whatever we can do, on the federal level to kind of help partner and provide additional resources there too, because it's not the school buildings that you and I went through, back in the day. It's new now. They need the technology, need the upgrades.
Right.
And honestly, something that's personal for me, as some of your listeners might know, I've got a younger sister with disabilities. Making sure that they not left behind in that learning gap is critically important, not just up to high school. I want to see that expanded not just into the workforce, but for many of them that want to go for higher ed, that there are opportunities properly funded so that they can continue on in their education and continue to be a great part of our workforce, but most importantly, our community. So those are kind of some of the things that I want to push on the education front.
Excellent. Special needs, and that's a really great thing to highlight there. I appreciate that. What are your thoughts, since we're on the topic? What are your thoughts about I guess it's called forgiveness of some of the college loans and things of that nature that's come out of the Biden administration?
That's a lightning rod issue right now that's
Yeah,
being debated in the press, and it's funny because I've even heard, as many of you know, I'm a Republican, but I've even heard a lot of Democrats criticize the proposal because it comes down to a fairness argument over who pays, how to pay. Student loan debt is crippling many students, so that they're coming out of schools with these debts the size of mortgages.
right.
So, good luck trying to, find a home on top of paying off your student debt. So I would have taken a couple of different approaches. I think you have to focus on, the interest rates of the issue rather than a straight forgiveness of everyone up to a certain point. Focus on the interest rate. Focus on why these costs of education are so high. Let's face it, David. Does every college need a rock wall or a football team? We have to really get to some of the root causes of these issues on the spending that's going on that's driving up these costs as well. Because it's great that students have the opportunity to go to college, university, or even trade school. Let's not forget trade school.
Yeah.
The biggest piece that I would have been supportive of, let's double the size of these Pell Grants. Because why I say double the size of the Pell Grants are right now approximately 6,500. Is the max that people can get. I'd love to see that increase, because if you double the size of Pell Grants, those are straight dollars that go into the school system, the universities, and even on both the public side and private sector side, that go directly to the schools. So it lessens the burden on any type of borrowing that many of the students have to have. So otherwise, it does become a fairness issue. I even have a friend who's a Democrat living in East Greenwich right now that is sitting there frustrated because he did the responsible thing. Because what he ended up doing, he's got two daughters, one's at Boston College, one's at Fairfield. Both of them, instead of having them borrow, he borrowed off of his home. So lesser interest rate. And he's sitting there going, wait a minute, I'm missing out on this. Where's my relief? I'm going to have to pay more now. Not only both of my daughters' debt, and he's got a third son that's going to be going in too, but possibly other students too. So, it's a big controversial issue. I've got a different three-pronged way to tackle it, but, certainly it's one that has to be addressed for the future.
Yeah, very true. So let's talk. You mentioned, as you said, you believe in climate change, which is good, because certainly right outside our windows some days. What are your thoughts on? I think it couples with energy as well. What are your thoughts about clean energy? Affecting climate change. We've got some attempts at more blue economy jobs here in Rhode Island. How do you see that Congress can help out Rhode Island in that respect, and what's going on there?
I'm a big believer because I saw the effects of it back in 2010, David, when I first got into office. Half of Cranston was underwater, along with, half of Warwick, during those not one, but two historic floods that we had. So I've seen, what, a lot of those man-made decisions have impacted us in the community now. And during that time, we were able to work with the federal government, our delegation, to ensure that we had dollars to do some mitigation efforts. In Cranston, we bought back some of those homes that were in flood prone areas and restored it back to its natural habitat. We have to do more of that, invest some of those federal dollars, leverage it with some of the state and local dollars, whether it's mitigation efforts like that, ensuring that we have clean water, clean air. A lot of those efforts need to continue on. Second of all, I am supportive of what you're talking about, not just the green economy, but you mentioned the blue economy. I
Yeah.
want to support some of that great research that's going on in our flagship institution, URI. Even though I got to throw a shout out to Rick, I'm a Rick alum, but URI is doing some great work in that blue economy. We got to invest some of those dollars there because we have a burgeoning blue economy here to support already our, growing green economy. Lastly, we got to make sure that we're continuing our efforts so that what we just faced right now, just these past couple of days with the flooding, the devastating flooding, a lot of on a go forward basis, the infrastructure projects that we do, we've got to be more conscious of how we do it. The dollars have to have a green focus in mind, but ensure that we're not making bad decisions that are going to impact us. Even if, you're talking about Route 95, how that S curve kind of flooded out. A lot of it is the drainage that happened because of just the topography of how it was laid out, but also making sure that you invest the dollars so you avoid issues like that into the future. So we got to make sure that we're doing what we can to support and grow, but also take away some of the problems of the past as we're investing these federal dollars in here.
Right. Yeah, no, very true. And I'm sorry there. I meant to say green economy when I asked the question. I always default to blue because I think of seafood and it just popped into my head blue economy. But you mentioned both of them, and that's key. Uh, so infrastructure obviously affects small businesses in a huge way. You mentioned broadband earlier with education, but that certainly would help small businesses as well. And the roads, obviously, if you can't get to a small business, what's the point? Are key. What are the infrastructure aspects do you think Congress could help out here for Rhode Island here?
Well, broadband is definitely on the top of the list because we talked about it with an education aspect. But one of the lessons that I saw firsthand during my time as mayor during the pandemic was the lack of access for many of our seniors. So I
Uh,
want to ensure that there is at least within a lot of the housing authorities across the state. Remember, a lot of these housing places were built way back when. They're these hard bricks and everything else. We need to make sure that they can have access and are properly wired for access because as we're seeing a lot more in the healthcare transitioning, not to in-person visits, but a lot more telehealth, a lot of the seniors are going to need that type of access. And a first step can be providing that type of connectivity within where they live, especially in a lot of those public housing units that are there. So that's key, making sure that we educate a lot of our seniors too on how to use the internet. That's one of the great things that happened in Cranston. We've got a wonderful library system, which, by the way, folks, is nationally recognized. That's one of the things that we have to do. Use some of our public resources, like our libraries, like our workforce development, boards, and utilize some of those dollars strategically to educate not only our seniors, some of the individuals across all broad spectrums, so that they're not afraid to, utilize that access because all the industries right now are moving towards, connectivity. So cyber is definitely one of those issues I want to continue to press on.
Yeah, good point to raise there. Any thoughts on cybersecurity and things like that? I know Congressman Langevin has been so forceful with it and key for the last few years.
Yeah, we have to continue to be ever vigilant because we're seeing so much going on in the cyber world, and especially with all of the scams that are out there. Technology is always, ahead of us, and especially some of the impacted people, like we're talking about, our most vulnerable is our seniors, people, special needs, or just average persons getting taken advantage of. Cybersecurity is critically important at all spectrums, whether it's to deal with the phishing schemes to going up to some of the more sophisticated, where we even saw it with our city website in Cranston. I was surprised because we updated our city website, but I was totally surprised to see the number of hits that were coming from overseas. And a lot of that was they're trying to find backdoor windows into systems. We have to continue to be ever vigilant. And cybersecurity is definitely one of those issues in many of our industries that we have to guard, but more so with small business owners. Because while I came out of that bigger industry with MetLife, and MetLife has a lot more resources. The smaller business owners need both the education opportunity about what's going on out there, but also more resources to help them gain access to fight some of the things that are coming in, because hackers are getting more sophisticated. They're always looking at smaller businesses where the defenses might not be up as much as some of the bigger guys.
Absolutely true. It's very true. Certainly a huge risk for not just any business, but like you said, small businesses and people, small business owners. So that's a very good point. I have to ask, Congress is very contentious. Let's be honest. We've seen it. It's a lot of log jams, a lot of just unfortunately not things getting done, especially on the House. How do you see yourself fitting in there if you were to win? What are your thoughts on how that can kind of be ameliorated a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things that I've heard, continuously out, in the neighborhoods, in our backyards, is people are sick and tired of the fighting on the extremes. And it
Yeah,
tends to be more the extremes, like on both the Democratic and Republican side, that yell the loudest so that they can get their sound bites on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever, so they can go out and raise dollars. I, on the other hand, want to go down there as that problem solver, the commons, bring back some common sense to Washington, D.C., working in the middle with Democrats and Republicans alike. And I have a 12-year history, 12-year track record in Cranston of showing that, because when I first got into office, it was an all Democratic council, but we were still able to tackle some big issues, even that unfunded pension that no one ever thought we could, address, but we did. You did it by working together, working with true facts and data, and making sure you have that productive dialogue. It might take time, but that's what people are starving for and hungry for. And that's what I want to bring on their behalf to Washington, D.C.
well, I think that's a great attitude, and it's certainly valid. I just get concerned when I realize you have to deal with party members of your own party, like Representative Green, uh,
Oh.
or Boebert. When the extremes really get out there and they get loud, it's very frustrating to see. So I hope.
Don't worry, those two are not anyone I'd be having lunch or dinner with.
Understandable, but yeah, such an interesting conundrum to watch sometimes. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to say in closing as you run for Congress?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love the opportunity, to be down in Washington, D.C., being a voice of not just small business owners, but all of you in the second district and all of us in Rhode Island. It's a difficult time in our country right now, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a cost of living crisis that's impacting us from gasoline, groceries, the beer to, everything else. It's impacting us at a time where we're making difficult decisions about whether we can go out, to enjoy a night out versus, how many times we can go out. And that's not what our economy is supposed to be about. I want to go down there to drive some of these costs down, do the best I can to represent all of us and be a voice of moderation for all of us. But most importantly, our business community. I grew up in small business, worked in big business, and been proud mayor of our state's second largest city for 12 years. I want to take all of that I've learned, my experience, my talents to Washington, D.C. to work on your behalf. I'd love to have your support. Anyone can follow me. Website is www.fungforri.com, FUNGFORRI.com, fungforri.com. Love to have your support. Thank you for your consideration. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, 63 days left. And hopefully you won't get too sick of the ads.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, there'll be a few less days by the time this airs. We're recording this now, but we'll be putting up in a little bit. But a reminder to everyone out there that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Though every city in town will be able to do early voting if you can at your town hall or different spots. Just check out where you live leading up to the election. But the Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. Mr. Mayor, good luck with the race. Good luck with getting down to Congress. We appreciate your time and the conversation today. Thank you, Allan.
Thanks, David. Great to see you. And thank you, everyone.
Take care. So thanks again for watching. Another great conversation. I hope that helped you and enlightened you as the election season goes on. Thanks as always to our guest Allan Fung for joining us, and to all our guests who join us here on this program. Always check out the Rhode Island Small Business Coalition at risbc.org, and social media. It's all on there, risbc.org. And thanks again for watching. Take care.